When I first started printmaking, there was this buzz in the air about printmaking, so that once people knew that I had built a press for my own personal use, it was like a wildfire. One artist would tell another and another and another, and they'd turn up here and they'd ask if I would be able to help them to make prints. We taught ourselves out of books. There were no teachers. When I first studied at East Sydney Technical College, I went to the principal of the college at the time and I said, I want to learn to etch. And he said, we don't have the means. We don't have anybody who can teach you to etch. And he said, we don't have any presses. And I said, yes, you do, because I found some in the storeroom. So they had been a hangover from the 1930s and so on. In the 1930s, there were wonderful black and white artists. We had many beautiful works by Norman Lindsay and his brilliant brother Lionel. We had Sid Long and Sidney Ure Smith and others. Wonderful tradition of black and white etchings. When I started printmaking, I could see that there was this desire for people to have graphic work. Artists always wanted to create if they could draw, but old methods were not good enough. We needed to discover ways of getting colour onto our paper. So this meant inking up à la poupée, multiple plates, other processes that such as collagraph and so on that you could roll up, experimenting with combining techniques in the one print, so that printmaking had to offer something that suited the times. So we needed to create something that was appropriate for the taste of the people in the 60s and 70s. It was an exciting time. In my studio, the artists that came through were always so happy to be here. They felt it was a privilege. Artists are not used to being waited on hand and foot, and they're not used to people saying, how can I help you to do your best? And that's what we did. So that, you know, we often had pretty high-blown egos by the time the people were finished printing here, because we were treating them like a lord. But that was the best way to get the best work out. We serviced them in every way. There'd be white wine, red wine, big lunches, lots of coffee, but it all worked. If we got good results, then it was all worthwhile. So many friendships came out of this print workshop. And I'm happy to say that now we're having this exhibition, everybody I've approached has said, oh, we'd love to be in it, because they are proud of that period when they made these prints. David Voigt's Pacific Tide and Chris Gentle's Island Pastoral were both done on Lord Howe Island. It was part of the Lord Howe Island project, and Michel Lefebvre, the entrepreneur who sent us there, wanted each artist to interpret the subject matter of the island any way they wished, so we were free to choose our own imagery. When David Voigt came back, the thing that has stuck in his mind were the Lord Howe Island Kentia palms. He also captured the sort of mist coming off the water and also the strong colours of island life. So it was a colour print. In those days, very few people produced colour prints, and that was the thing that we specialised in. We moved towards colour in our printmaking, and David was one of the first artists to use really strong colour. Chris Gentle's Island Pastoral is a beautiful work. He wanted to bleed the image to the edge, so that's why it's hung showing the decal all around the edge of the paper. It's a sugar lift, so that you won't see a lot of lines there as you would if it were a hard ground. David Voigt's is a hard ground, so you'll see that Chris Gentle's work is much softer, and it has fluid brush strokes because he's a master of painting. Basically, etching is a process of resist. You take a copper or zinc or some other metal plate, you cover it while it's hot with a melted bitumen and beeswax. That goes hard and gives you a waxy surface. You smoke that surface to make it blacker, so that when you draw your lines into it with a needle, you see the copper shining through and you can see how you're going. Traditionally, artists would get their tone by cross-hatching like that, you know, lines going in different directions, making a lattice of lines, and the more they have, the darker it becomes. Once the artist has revealed the raw copper by drawing into this waxed plate, you put it in the acid and you leave it there until the acid's bitten just the right level. It becomes almost alchemy to work out how to put the etching in the acid and how long to do it for. And that way you produce an etching. Wendy Sharp is a lovely artist to work with because she's so direct and she's got a wonderful work ethic. She says what she wants, we know what she wants, we set her up with all the materials and she just gets stuck into it. We've recently produced 4 prints of hers in black and white, and one of them is on display. It's called 3 Women and a Pirate Hat. It's a beautiful print because it's so, the tones are so lovely. We go from very light grey through to a solid, rich, velvety black. This meant about 4 or 5 goes at the aquatints because initially she did what you call a sugar lift. She worked in sugar onto the surface of the plate, just drawing loose lines, which is something she's very good at. This particular print that's in the exhibition would be considered a very large etching. Now, she's an artist who likes a big canvas and she likes to be painterly. So this is an example of the print workshop devising a style that most suits a painterly artist. So we have a number of master printmakers in the workshop, people who started off straight out of college. We're very proud of Michael Kempson, who's now head of the College of Fine Art Printing. Trevor Riak, who went through university with Michael Kempson, has been in my workshop for the last 30 years making wonderful prints. He's almost a fixture here, and we work almost like a well-oiled machine in that we almost read each other's minds, which you have to do when you're using complicated equipment and when you're trying to interpret the needs of an artist. He loves to make his own prints and he's very, very good at it. He's mastered very delicate aquatints so that when you look at his print in this exhibition, you'll see that it has multiple colours. He inks up a la Pupae on one plate and then he puts another plate over the top and it is also inked up a la Pupae. So you may have him applying about 8 different colours to those 2 plates to get the effect that he has. His etchings tend to look like watercolours. In recent times, Art Equity have been commissioning work, paying the artists well and paying us to print their work. This is a print by the great Australian Aboriginal artist Tommy Watson. His work is made up of very rich paint and dots, so the challenge was to reproduce every one of his dots faithfully. In etching, it's very hard to do a good sloppy dot, which is what Tommy Watson likes. His work is extremely painterly. So we couldn't have a perfect circle, it had to be very organic. And in this rich colour, it's a collagraph, and a collagraph is a plate that is built up. So you take a matrix, and to that matrix you add material that goes hard, and once it's hard you roll it up with rollers and print it. In this case, it's a reductive print, so that as we went along we had to imagine what it would look like when it was finished. We had to keep removing more and more material and kept our fingers crossed that when we got to the final stage it would all come together. As well as that, we wanted to emboss the plate so that it would have the same sort of qualities as his paintings, because his paintings have a fabulous texture. We were asked to work with Adam Cullen to do some of his Kelly images. So we were actually working from an existing painting. And we had to devise a way of getting the perfect dribble. And that was difficult. We had to cut it by hand but make it look spontaneous. The most important thing was not to kill the spontaneity. It had to look as if he had just stepped back holding a paintbrush and dribbling it down the front of the picture. George Gittos was in Rwanda at the time of that terrible massacre. He pulled people to safety, and I think it must have been soul-destroying to see what was happening there. But the image that stuck in his mind was one of the local people, a preacher, holding the Bible and preaching to the people in the church minutes before they all lost their lives. And I think that making the painting and making the etching helped him to work this terrible experience out of his system. I was asked to do something that linked with the Asian Olympics. So I thought, why not do the animals of the Asian zodiac? The Chinese women do a wonderful form of cutout using very simple animals and bits of paper, and they usually do them in red, and I was inspired by that simple imagery. I didn't draw on the block that I chose to carve. I just went straight into it with the tool so that I keep a spontaneous look. And so in the case of the pig, I just thought of the pigs I've seen at the Royal Easter Show and sketched it in. With relief prints, you print from off the surface, so anywhere where you cut, it remains white. This type of printing, it's like woodblock or any other heavy matrix that can be carved. You print by rolling up the surface. Exuberance is my granddaughter. I saw her hanging upside down on a bar, and I just sketched her very rapidly. With lithography, it's a very hard process. If you put a bit of grease on the stone, then that's it. The stone you've ruined it if you've done it in the wrong place. So really only very confident draftspeople use the technique of lithography. We all love the work of Toulouse-Lautrec and aim at that looseness. In my case, I carefully transferred a sketch in Conte crayon to the stone, and that doesn't actually damage the stone or cause any printing. It just gives me a rough outline of the figure. The stone is then placed on the bed of a press, my ancient press that I've lent to Theo Temblay, and this particular lithograph was done on a stone that probably has been in the possession of the one person who I bought it from for 90 years. It's a very, very ancient stone, so that it's lovely to work on these old materials. Today, people experiment and anything goes. You've got people scratching it. We've even got people printing etchings by running a bulldozer over them instead of a press. So, this century, people have been extremely experimental. I enjoy the joy that printmaking gives. When I see artists just beaming with happiness, or when I see them struggling to get an idea out and you see the angst on their face, and then when we show them the proof, when we roll those blankets back on the etching press and lift the piece of paper, you can hear them catch their breath until they see it. And then there's the worrying moment as they look at it, because it's always very different, because with printmaking, it comes out back the front. You have to do everything in reverse, so it doesn't look like what they've just drawn, and it takes them a while to adjust. I love all that. I love seeing their reaction to their work in print. I also love to help them to understand all the processes so that they can extend that knowledge. Once they've made a very simple hard brown, the next thing is to coax them into aquatint or colour. So it's a lovely learning process. It's great for the two people, the printer and the artist, to work together to get excellence.